"You are worse than a fool," Michelle said, getting to her feet, the pistol in her hand. "You have no care for your species. For thousands of years men dreamed of pacts with demons. Only now are such things possible. And what would you be paid with? What would your price be for aiding this thing to free itself and grow?" That is William Gibson's framing for an AI becoming a super intelligence. That helping them become that is like making a pact with a demon. And I love it. But I want to explain why Neuromancer, the Arthur C. Clarke Hugo Nebula Award-winning genre-defining book, is not my favorite example of his writing, and that if you want to get into his work, I would suggest starting with Burning Chrome. Or why I didn't necessarily enjoy this as much as I hoped. As a fan of the cyberpunk genre, yes, hello Momo. Also, this was not meant to be my first video of the year, but Paramount is blocking my big Avatar video on the main channel, so, you know, burn them to the ground. But I can do this, so let's talk about it. Neuromancer is set in a world where AI are not allowed to become superintelligences for fear of them taking over. I can understand that, but to get around that, someone creates kind of two halves to an artificial intelligence that are destined to join together. Or they really want to, and when they do, they will fuse and become that hyper super intelligence way beyond our understanding. And this book is about Case, a hacker who was blackmailed into helping that AI do it. A hook that really got me from the start, and a framing that really excited me. Now, little known fact, but cyberpunk is basically my favorite genre. Blade Runner 2049 is my favorite film of all time, and I love that it's a film so based in its thematic questions. And this book helped codify the tropes that we identify with the genre. Think neon lights, the influence of Japanese culture, the contrast and juxtaposition of high technology and low life with an emphasis on the problems of large corporations. This is the quintessential cyberpunk book. You can see the Matrix in it, with a digital world that, like computer code, can be bent or broken. You can bend or break or manipulate the digital world as well through a kind of hacking. Or you can see Ghost in the Shell with its transhumanist themes, where the line between the computer and the brain kind of get a bit blurred till they're almost one and the same in some cases. But I have complicated feelings about Neuromancer. On the one hand, I love so much of what it does with its world and themes, that it's fast-paced and it's got high stakes the whole way through. It dragged me from the beginning to the end. And Gibson's way of visualizing the digital world is creative and compelling. Like if you hack through something, then you create a door inside a wall, or you use a battering ram, which represents a hacking program or a key, and you smash through it. You feel claustrophobic when he's describing these coffins, and yes, that's the word that he uses to describe these tiny little sleeping apartments that poor people sleep in. And it kind of makes you feel hatred for the opulence of Lady 3 Jane when you realize just how much space she has. I could really visualize Wintermute, which by the way is a fantastic name for an AI, with every word that Gibson gave him on the page. Wintermute is only part of another, a, shall we say, potential entity. I, let us say, am merely one aspect of that entity's brain. It's rather like dealing, from your point of view, with a man whose lobes have been severed. Let's say you're dealing with a small part of the man's left brain. Difficult to say if you're dealing with a man at all in a case like that. It's just so full of character. But despite this great setup, I found that the actual way that William Gibson wrote all of this didn't communicate a lot of it very clearly. I mean, just listen to this passage here. He withdrew the line through the library ice. It whipped back into his program, automatically triggering a full system reversal. The Sent/Netgate snapped past him as he backed out, subprograms whirling into the core of the icebreaker as he passed the gates where they had been stationed. "Out, Brew," he said. That's the sort of writing that you get, and it doesn't stop, by the way. That's how it is the entire way through the book. Or later on, take this. The Sent/Net ICE had accepted his entry as a routine transfer from the Consortium's Los Angeles complex. He was inside. Behind him, viral subprograms peeled off, meshing with the gate's code fabric, ready to detect any real Los Angeles data when it arrived. There is a lot, and I mean a lot, of technobabble in this book. Jargon that's explaining how hackers do things, how they solve problems, without the reader necessarily understanding quite why. Sometimes problems can just be solved and you go, oh, how did they do that? Because he doesn't explain any of these terms in the book at all, pretty much. And even if you have a kind of vague understanding of what they might mean, it's still hard to navigate exactly what he's saying at a lot of points. Sometimes it's hard to know quite what is happening. You might have to read passages multiple times. And those passages that I read before, I only kind of understood them because Netrunner, a card game that I really like, is based on this book. So it uses terms like icebreaker, subroutine, so I kind of had a vague understanding of what they might mean, but not everyone has played this card game. This is fine, the Technobabble, if it's every so often, but it's constant in this book. It's pretty unrelenting and unforgiving. And the end result is that I think I might have missed some character or plot beats because I was my brain was snagging on trying to figure out these other things that I was never really meant to understand. And as such, I dismissed some exposition that I was meant to remember as Technobabble. And that's not great. Now, the good side of Technobabble is that it's incredibly immersive with this book. If anything, it leaves you with a distinct impression of what this world is like. I left Neuromancer with a real feel and vibe for William Gibson's world that he has created. One that I wanted to spend more time in. And that's great. But the prose doesn't flow as well as it could have. There's also a lot of switching between time and place, different times, different places, different perspectives, and you can sort of do it like that on a flip of a dime. And I spoke with my friend Benji from the Tale Foundry, who also really enjoyed this book, and he agreed that we both got a little bit lost around the 75% mark in terms of knowing why people are where they are and what they're doing there. That all comes back to that Technobabble stuff, is that you kind of miss important points of exposition because you dismiss it along with so much of the other information you're trying to process. But Gibson does manage to bring this all together at the end, and you do kind of understand how it all ends up and why. The characters are fine, but this is a trait of older sci-fi as it is. The characters of Case, Molly, Armitage, I didn't get quite a great sense of who they were, but I did really get a good sense of Wintermute, who is a major character in the book. But don't listen to me, what do I know? This book won the Arthur C. Clarke, Hugo, and Nebula Awards all on its own, so clearly it was doing something incredible at the time. And maybe I just didn't get it, maybe I'm just not smart enough. But I still really did enjoy Neuromancer, and I didn't want to leave this iconic world that Gibson created. However, if you want to get into the cyberpunk genre, if you want to read his work, then I'm not going to suggest Neuromancer. I'm going to suggest Burning Chrome. This is a series of short stories by William Gibson set in the same world, but I feel that it has all the strengths of Neuromancer and not nearly as many of the flaws. The Technobabble in this is a lot lighter, it's a lot more accessible. You know exactly what the piece of technology that they're dealing with in any given story does and why it's important. And it's not obscured by a whole lot of language. The characters I also felt I could really get a sense of, but I also think that the short story medium really works for Gibson. It allows him to take a really close look at someone's life and how it's impacted by a particular piece of technology that he wants to play with. It's philosophical, it's thematic, it's deep, it's complex, the characters felt real. So yeah, if you want to get into Gibson and cyberpunk in general, then do get Burning Chrome. And Burning Chrome, by the way, is a fantastic short story in here. It's got sort of the same heist feel as Neuromancer, because they're both heist stories, but this one, in my opinion, was better. I really liked it. Anyways, that's all from me. I hope you guys have had a good kind of start to 2021. I'm sorry that I haven't got a video out on my main channel yet. Paramount, the company, is being a dick. It's 2.5 hours long. I've been working on it for months, and it will be out when I've resolved those issues. I've also got on writing, on world building stuff coming, and more channels. One of my big aims for this year is more videos on the second channel. So, see you guys in the future.